What a beautiful day, huh? I can't tell you how excited I am about today, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But good morning and welcome. Thank you all for being here. So this is an auspicious occasion for Washington. For those of you who don't know, I'm the president of Washington College. You can tell because I have a Washington College tie on. I want to thank all of you for being here to dedicate the Radiant Echo Project, which is the passion project of Lynn McLain. If you don't mind, I'm just going to tell a brief, quick story about you and I. It's a good one. So I was here a week and a half when I first started here 2.5 years ago, and I got a call from Ms. McLain saying she needed to talk to me, and so we met, and I spent an interesting hour and a half with her where she described some of the shortcomings she felt relative to this project from the support the college was providing to her. And for those of you who know Lynn, know that she can be pretty direct and forceful, and so this truly is, Lynn, very much the culmination of your extraordinary passion and your hard work. And if you don't mind me saying this, I know that your mother and father would be extraordinarily proud of this event. So congratulations to you and your whole family. Thank all of you in the room who contributed to this project. This is a big deal for the college. It's a beautiful. Those of you who have seen this lit up, is a beautiful thing. It adds tremendously to the college, but it also honors two extraordinary people, Dr. Conkling and your mom and dad. So as you know, this sculpture honors the memories of two of our most distinguished alumni, Dr. Joseph McLain and Dr. John Conkling. Two people who left an indelible mark on Washington College in more ways than one. And we'll talk about that later. We will have our dedication program during lunch in a little bit, but for now, we have the pleasure of hearing from the artists behind the sculpture and from some of our own Washington College faculty. To lead us through this morning's symposium, I have the pleasure of introducing Washington College's W. Alton Jones Professor of Chemistry, Emeritus, Dr. Frank Cregan. Dr. Cregan?
Thank you, Kurt. With a crowd like this, I feel almost compelled to start with a Chemistry 202 organic chemistry lecture. but I'll refrain. So good morning, everyone, again, and I'm thrilled to be here today to have been chosen to be the moderator for this symposium, which is the first event in a 3-event, full-day tribute to John Conkling and Joe McLain. Two outstanding alumni, teacher, scholars, respected scientists, trusted colleagues, and international leaders in the field of pyrotechnics. Together, they have taken apart the ancient and mysterious art displayed in fireworks to reveal the basic principles that drive complex chemical reactions. And through their writings, they have made the science of pyrotechnics understandable, not only to people students gathered in classrooms such as this, but also to the public who sit and stand, looking skyward, spellbound by colorful artistic displays. More will be said about Joe and John at the dedicatory luncheon that follows this symposium. But first, I want to give a shout out to the two people who have made this event possible. That's Alex Castro and Lynn McLain. Alex was a lecturer for about 8 years in the Department of Art and Art History. And he had a vision, and if you knew him, a passion, for ways by which the arts and sciences would come together in complementary ways, not only here on campus, but in the broader community as well. armed with a $500,000 grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, Alex used his powers of persuasion and his charm to promote creative, interdisciplinary scholarship. Lynn McLain, on the other hand, began to learn about and eventually learned to love fireworks and pyrotechnics at home, at the breakfast table, at the lunch table, at the dinner table. In later life, Lynn has become a fireworks historian, the author of a new book, a copy of which is available outside, for the love of fireworks. Lynn had, for many years, as Kurt alluded to, imagined a fireworks-inspired memorial to her dad and to pyrotechnics, but was unsure of the what and the where and the how for such a tribute. And then Lynn met Alex. Soon they were bouncing ideas off one another. They said to one another, what about the McLain Atrium? What about, as a gallery, what about a non-static display? What about something that does in fact remind people, inspire people to think about fireworks? And so they got together. And together they came up with a plan. And the plan is, one, to hold a contest, to have people who are artists, who are light specialists, to submit proposals for a display in honor of Joe and John. So the contest began. We had entries. We had presentations by those who submitted those wonderful entries. And then finally we selected, I was on the committee, we selected Radiant Echo. We are joined today by the designer of Radiant Echo, Glenn Schrum, the principal and founder of Flux Studio in Baltimore. Glenn holds a BA in architecture from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and an MFA in studio art from the Maryland Institute College of Art. In addition to his work and his artistry in the studio, he's also assistant professor of lighting design in the Parsons School of Design in the New School in New York. I'm delighted to present Glenn Schrum, who will tell all about Radiant Echo. Glenn.
Thank you, Frank. And I'm going to continue the appreciation that the previous two speakers have had before I start my talk. I wanted to thank everyone in this room. Without all of you, the artwork wouldn't be what it is. Varying contributions of different types, but it has meant so much to us as creative designers to have this opportunity and to provide this to the college. I specifically want to thank Lynn McLain. As has been mentioned, she's been inspiring and unwavering in her commitment to this project. And that's what it takes to do important work many times, most of the time. Washington College President Landgraf, Provost DiQuincio, and also Vic Costa and Laura Johnson, who were invaluable in realizing the work. Development group and the marketing group has also been instrumental. In order to accomplish what we've done in the installation of the work, we've had a lot of team members outside of Flux Studio, including engineers and contractors. Most impactful was Four Wall Entertainment. They were the fabricator and programmers of the work. They've done an amazing job in supporting us realizing that vision. Before I go on to our team, I'd like to have some applause for everybody I just mentioned. So Flux Studio is most certainly not just me. We are a team of talented individuals that are committed to what we do, and there have been a lot of people in our team that have had contributed to this. Most specifically, Laura Dillon, who's here today, who helped with the proposal and has been right alongside the project every step along the way in creating a vision for how to interpret this great brief into an artwork. Lichi Liu, who's not with us, but she did a lot of the programming this summer. My business partner, Brian McIntyre, and my wife, Marianne Savage. So thank you, everyone. So this is the format of the talk, what I am going to be presenting. I want to provide a little bit of a context for what preceded the artwork, and then provide some ideas behind the work. And it is a little bit of a reverse artist talk because so few of you have experienced the work fully. So I'm going to be showing some documentation that we took during the programming phase, but I very much encourage everyone to experience the work and then look back at the handout that I have to provide some information about the programming, and also hopefully remember some of the points that I'm raising here. So in terms of background, Flux Studio's research, we are a transdisciplinary firm, so we're artists and designers, engineers and researchers, academics. And one topic that we are particularly interested in is what we've come to call lightness. So those characteristics and qualities of light that are unique to the medium. And to better understand the medium of light, we've looked to natural light phenomena as a way to understand what light does on its own terms, not within the structure of architecture, which is often making light a very static form, or reinforcing form through static conditions. We believe that lightness and light as a medium has unique opportunities to create experiences that are very dynamic in terms of how we view the world. So that dynamic can include surprise and curiosity, shifts in light that occur within our field of view, dynamic viewing where your understanding of where the next light element might occur is one that is surprising to you, and also this active viewing. So we try to create experiences for people where your experience of light is one that is in the background all the time, but sometimes it moves to the foreground. More context of the work, as was mentioned, is the Sandbox Initiative. So I wanted to put forward the brief as we received it, and so that you could understand the context that we were given to come up with ideas. So way back in July of 2015, we received this request for qualifications. The position within the McLain Atrium was established as the location, and the use of light as an essential quality of the work was there, and also that we wanted to have that the artwork was meant to have an impact on Washington College students, and then expanded to the Chestertown community. So these are renderings that we did in our initial proposal and text that was in our initial proposal that we still feel is represented in the work. So we wanted the artwork to evoke the experience of fireworks, but not necessarily the appearance of fireworks. So there was a level of abstraction that was built into our idea from the beginning. And that has allowed us to come up with a lot of different ways that the artwork presents light that is evocative of fireworks and this concept of lightness without everything having to look like a firework. But we were also interested in how there is an opportunity through this work to give you a different sense of fireworks. And so specifically, the idea that you're in the firework itself, so almost floating within in the space of a firework by going up on the bridges. So we really thought of the artwork as one experience from the lawn and from the exterior, and quite a different experience from within the atrium. So this is what it looks like now, or what it will look like tonight. A couple of snapshots. The view on the left is from the upper bridge. The view on the right is from outside on the lawn. So you have a very different understanding of the images and shapes that are built into our work. So the components of the artwork that were originally presented were there were two components. We wanted one component that would be a light emitting device, points of light that would be programmed, and another that would be a light reflecting device. So we called them from the beginning pixel strands, so a very low resolution display, and then reflector strands. So we still have this vocabulary. We shifted around the quantity of those and the position of those different strands, but the idea of pixel strands and reflector strands is still there. And the reflector strands were always considered to be a way that the artwork would have an interest during the day and at night. With light artwork, many times you have a piece that seems like it isn't meant to be viewed during the day. It's only meant to be viewed after dark. So our intent was very much to have it be a different artwork during the day, but one that still has interest in. These images were taken quite early in the morning during the programming, and that is the time of the year when the low angle sun comes in at sunrise and hits these reflectors. So when you get direct sun on these reflectors, they all are little glints of light that are very much like the pixels that emit light from the LEDs at other times. But these reflectors also serve a purpose during the electric lighting, nighttime lighting condition of representing the overall screen in different ways and presenting it in different ways. So I encourage everyone, when you're experiencing the artwork, to look at the different reflectors and understand or try to take in how they are interacting with the other conditions. In terms of reflection, another really important component is that we very much considered the glass walls that are on the front and the back of the McLain Atrium. And so when you're within that, inside of that space, especially on the bridges, you have this sense that you're immersed in a field of light through actually quite few points of light emission. So we always presented the work as being made up of dynamic shows. We initially called them states, so that the artwork would not be static, and that this narrative that the artwork would have would really primarily be take two different forms. One is what we call the resting state. This features more subtle shifts in light intensity, and our intent with the resting state was, for one, we don't want the community to have fatigue from these shows that are more exciting and interesting. We want those to be exceptional moments that punctuate your time in the science building. We're interested in a student sitting in one of the tables below the artwork. Most of the time there's this very quiet light that's above them, and then occasionally there'll be something else that'll be happening visually that might draw their eyes up and allow them to think about what they're doing in a different way through that sort of momentary pause to something that is just unexpected. And that unexpected part, the more foregrounded shows, we call the active states. So these active states are choreographed specifically to reference the choreography of a typical fireworks show. So they all start with a sort of slow, they start more slowly and they build to a crescendo. But every one of the active state shows includes a component that is this surprise, this sort of lightness, this curiosity, when we thought about what our experiences are of watching fireworks, the uncertainty of where the next firework will come within the sky. The surprise when you start to see overlap of different colors. Those notions of fireworks are what we're trying to embody. We try to embody in all of these active state shows. So the active state shows were very much informed by a workshop that we did last year in April with faculty and students. So at this point we had established the physical structure of the artwork. We knew how many components we were going to have and roughly where they would be. We knew that we had active state and resting state as the two different kind of ways that it would operate, but we were still really considering ways that we could introduce content that would meet one of Lynn's goals, which was to have this artwork also be a learning tool at the college. So we had a very productive workshop I was so impressed to see the range of different academic departments that were represented. And we started the workshop with a question of what the experience of fireworks meant to the participants, so that we started with a level of abstraction about fireworks. And then we moved on to really specifically thinking about how might you use this very low resolution screen to represent an idea or a aspect of fireworks that would be meaningful in different disciplines. And so from that, we developed these active state shows. And so I'm going to go into each of these active state shows very quickly to give you a bit of context of what their meaning is. There's a lot more here. It's a lot longer time to talk about it. But generally, in terms of the way the artwork operates, the resting state is going to be the way the artwork is perceived starting at 9:15 a.m. So during the day, the artwork will be in this sort of quiet state. Resting state, I should say, is also all white in terms of its color. And then starting at sunset, there'll be a sequence where there'll be a period of resting state followed by punctuations of different active state shows. And we've intentionally randomized those shows so that if a student comes into the building for a class multiple days of the week and they're always there at the building at the same time, they won't always see the same show. So we're really trying to have it remain somewhat enigmatic in terms of what's coming next. And it's important to say that although there is intention behind these program shows for how they could be used to teach and learn about fireworks, it's not critical that you understand that in order to appreciate the work. And we expect that there will be students and faculty that will experience the work without having any understanding of the broader context of it for a period of time, and then maybe they would understand through either reading something on the wall or being forwarded a description of the programming or being brought to the artwork by a faculty member. They'll then they'll then understand that there are these other ideas behind the work, and then they won't see it in the same way. And that's part of what we want to have it remain interesting over time. So the first show I want to talk about is the resting state. We call this trickle flash. It's a bit of a lighting geek inside joke, so you don't have to worry about that. But so what you see on the right is a photograph from the process of roughly what that resting state looks like. So it's a pattern of white light and shadow. There's a bit of a subtle dynamic. This is the show that we'll see this morning when the artwork is illuminated for the first time. The active state shows will be this evening. So the image on the left is a snapshot from the software that we used to create what would be inserted into this computer system that would end up resulting in points of light within the McLain Atrium. So without going into too much detail, the image on the right is the photo that's used to then be overlaid with these points of light, and then it gets translated through computer into the pixel grid that you see on the wall. It's magic. So for each of these, you're going to see a representation of how we predicted what the light would look like on the pixel strands on the left, and on the right, this is the video that goes into that process. So these videos that we create are very abstract, but for the specific purpose of creating outcomes on the artwork. So the next show I wanted to talk about, the first active state, is called Axial Shimmer. So this show is specifically tied to the site, so the McLain Atrium. And I should mention that our other ideas about the artwork were very much that it would be site-specific and integrated into the architecture. So in this show, we have a portion of the show where there's two rows in the middle of the space that align with the column that is in the center of the space. And so there's a show that it revolves around or is based on how those columns are significant in terms of how it's programmed. The second half of the show, it rotates 90 degrees and it becomes a reference to eye level on the bridges. So this is one that if you're standing at different locations within the space, you have a very specific notion of that space that you may not have understood before. That's a snapshot of still from the Axial Shimmer show. So you see the two white LED strands that are at the column. And then from the exterior, what's interesting is you don't see the white LED pixels, you just see the color around them. So it's very specific to these architectural conditions in the space. The next active state show we called Fireworks. Arguably all of them could be called Fireworks, but this one we kept quite basic in demonstrating in as clear a way as we could this progression of fireworks display through a crescendo. And so this is a video of a progress version of that show. So it's not what ended up being done, but it does give you a sense of the dynamic that you have in the artwork. And so this would be taken from one of the tables in the bottom of the space. So you see this our interest in active viewing, about how you don't really know where the next points of light will occur. So another one of our shows is called Exploding Stars. So this one is a direct reference to the chemistry of fireworks, and it's an abstraction of a lift charge. So here's a video of what occurs behind that mask. So a lift charge, and then a time delay fuse that moves the display up further, and then a bursting charge, and then a star that results, and then another lift charge, and another bursting charge. So it really is an abstraction of the steps in a firework display. And we tried to make the reference to the fireworks a little bit more direct in terms of a shape of the oval and then the shape of the typical star, without trying too hard to make it look exactly like fireworks. They are meant to reference fireworks. Another aspect of this show that was specific to the chemistry of fireworks is that the colors that we used reference the salts that are the basis of the chemistry that create the color. So we limited our colors in this show to the unique colors of the chemistry of fireworks. Based on our understanding from Lynn's book, we also limited the use of blue because we understand that's the hardest color to do. And we did very specific color tests based on viewing the fireworks this past 4th of July to figure out how these colors would be specific to our memory of that. The next show is called Supernova. And we had this idea from early in the project of, we understood through some research about a relationship between what happens, or a contradiction between what happens at a molecular level in fireworks, where there's a collapsing in, but the visual of fireworks being a burst outward. And so that idea was at play. But based on the workshop, we also were introduced to the idea that we may want to take on astronomy as a topic. And so we then understood that the progression of the growth and destruction of a star sort of follows that same pattern. So this show, which this is an early storyboard that we had. It starts with a cloud formation, so it's this amorphous pattern of light on the screen, and then over time the star becomes formed as a clear shape, and then that shape gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it bursts and becomes a black hole. So it's or it's just a circle that changes. And then the last show that we have is one that was, again, the result, we designed this show to be very specific to how the artwork fits in the atrium, but in this case, we also really were interested in studying additive color theory and the psychology of light and color. So it references the reflectors that are positioned within the space. So this is a point in the show where the only LED points on the pixel strand are the ones that align with the reflector strand. So it becomes a drawing in the atrium of that limited amount of points of light. But the show goes through a series of color transitions that are always a primary color of light at the pixels that align with the reflectors, and then the complementary secondary color of light for the field. So we limited our color in this case to the components of the red, green, blue LED that we have in very specific ways. And there are some interesting things that happen with your perception of color with this piece. So after image and additive color mixing are at play. So that's what I have. Thank you.
So Glenn said in the conversation we had through emails that he's more than happy to entertain questions from the audience.
How long is each?
Each active state show is, well, some are 3 minutes and some are 3.5 minutes.
And do they all show every?
They rotate in their order, but every night you'd be able to see every show. The display that we'll have tonight and the setting that we configured for the college, if they're displaying the artwork, there's a demonstration mode where it quickly goes through all of the shows with a very short resting state in between. But we aren't limiting any one show to only certain times of the day or times of the year. We're just randomizing when they occur. Yes?
Does it require a certain kind of maintenance?
It does, and that was built into the request for qualifications for us to consider the issue of maintenance, and it's one that we've spoken about a lot along the way. So the fabricator, the four-wall company that did the installation, has a maintenance contract to keep the artwork up, where they're going to be coming on site and dusting it and making sure the electronics work. It's also set up that there can be remote troubleshooting, so they can log in on the internet and see what's happening. So it is electronics. There's always something that can go wrong, but we've made provisions to try to make sure it will operate the most consistently for the longest amount of time. Yes?
Is it possible to reprogram the lights
It is possible to reprogram the lights, and we've talked about that it would be really great for there to be a workshop or a course where we worked with Flux Studio worked with students to come up with another program show. We feel it's very important that the integrity of the artwork is maintained by keeping the programming as we have it and allowing it to operate in that consistent way. But the opportunity, especially after students have lived with the work for a while and they have their own ideas based on what they've seen, for us to be involved would be great. And as an educator, I welcome that. I think it would be a really impactful way for the community to understand more about how artwork like this is made, and there's so much technology behind this work that's the lecture I could give for another hour and a half. Yes?
How heavy is one of those strands, like really the miracle strands?
Not very heavy at all. I mean, the actual, so the, I don't remember the exact weight. We calculated the weight on the overall bars, but it really quite insubstantial. The bottom of all the strands have reflectors. Those reflectors at the bottom of the strands are solid. They're solid aluminum. All the others are hollow aluminum. So the solid ones at the bottom are to stabilize the artwork through a breeze. But it is, let me tell you that the structure on the ceiling, it could hold much more than it is. We've sized it for the possible student hanging on it that we hope will never Yes?
Did the design elements of the reflectors and the pixels have to be made specifically for this project, or were some of them already in existence?
So the reflectors themselves are standard parts. They aren't typically polished, so we have them polish them. They're usually used in handrails and other architectural applications, so they're not typically considered to be components of artwork. The pixel strand is completely custom. So that's a circuit board that was made for the purpose of this project, and we looked at standard components, and they were more expensive and larger. So this was something that the fabricator brought to the project, was a source to be able to make those strands. The actual LED itself is such a straightforward tool these days. The one that we're using, it's not a complicated tool. What's unique about it on our project is the spacing and the configuration that allows them to be hung and the electronics that allow them to be controlled. But the LED itself is readily available, the sort of thing you find in little novelties. So.
How many lights are there?
I have it written. We have 52 strands, and each strand is, I'm not going to be able to do all this math. I can send you that after. But we have calculated it, and I could look it up when the next presentation's happening, and I'll have an answer for you. Sorry. Yes?
But is the timing because of light sensitive, or is it time, like 8 o'clock, it's going to do this?
It's on what we call an astronomical time clock. So built into the software is a table of sunset times. And so it's not based on how much sun is available at any given time. It's based on when the sunset, the actual minute of the day when the sunset occurs, for when the active state shows begin. And then 9:15 a.m. is our start point, which was tied to the academic bell schedule. Sorry, yes.
Since fireworks are essentially this miracle of sight and sound, is there any provision for maybe like a future, I know you wouldn't be able to see it from the green, but like maybe from the atrium, a small sound component that would not be too distracting?
Right. Well, that's a great question, and one that had been asked even from the early presentation of the concept. We haven't typically incorporated sound into our artwork, so it would have been, although we did a lot of things on this project that we hadn't done before, so it's not unheard of that we would have taken it on, but our thought was that to have sound would have maybe fatigued the community. I mean, anytime I've worked on any project, mostly in exhibition environments when we worked on projects and there's a repeating sound, if you're in that space for a long time, it starts driving you a bit crazy, but it also is something that you stop hearing. You just, in order to concentrate, your perceptual system starts to block it out. The possibility of it being something that's punctuated would have been interesting, but it also meant that there would be a whole other system that we would have to incorporate.
Is this a daily show, or is it on an intermittent schedule?
It's daily, so we set up 2 daily sequences that are randomized. So one is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and the other one is the other days of the week. So it doesn't follow a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, because we thought that might align with the use by the college. But so every day there's something set. And then we also, at the college's request, built a holiday schedule, which is one where the shows will happen more frequently. So at the beginning of the holiday break, there'll be anytime you would come to the atrium at that point when students aren't using the space, there'll be more active state shows and less resting state shows. And that's actually something that if in the future there needed to be adjustments, it's reasonable to do that.
Is there an on-site supervisor, like in the college IT department, or sort of monitors?
We've been working with Vic Costa and his team in facilities, but ultimately, because of the service contract, all they have to do is call for wall. And so we think it's probably not a good idea for anybody on the college to try to figure out the electronics.
So please join me in thanking Glenn. Glenn will be giving brief remarks again at lunch, and again this evening during the display that is open to the entire community. So Glenn mentioned this workshop in April, attended by nearly 20 faculty and students, and we have with us today 2 of the faculty members who participated in that program, that workshop, which was, as he said, a surprise in terms of the involvement of the people who attended. So, and with us today is Charlie Kem, who is Joseph H. McLain Associate Professor of Physics and of Environmental Studies and Science, and Chair of the Department of Physics, and James Lipchak, who is Associate Professor of Biophysical Chemistry and co-chair of the Department of Chemistry. And this morning, each will share with you how pyrotechnics connects to their disciplines, and to perhaps tell you how they envision radiant echo being used as a teaching tool. The format we will follow is that each will speak to you, and then following both presentations, we will open up the floor to questions and answers. And maybe Glenn will chime in as well. So I'm pleased first to introduce to you Charlie Kemp.
James, I need your expertise in this. Okay, great. I've been working in the background with Lynn for the last 4 years, and I'm just in awe, Lynn, of this project and how you brought it together and for your leadership. It's truly amazing, and I thank you all, friends and donors that have helped to make all this a reality. I was asked to speak about how fireworks and the radiant echo sculpture connect with teaching and learning in my native discipline of physics. When I think of physics, when I think of fireworks, I think of them as projectiles. And as a kid, I remember seeing that glowing orange slow fuse on an aerial shell and its upward trajectory and the sense of anticipation for the explosion at the top of its flight. Some fireworks are ballistic and some are rockets. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a state where many illegal fireworks were actually legal. The shells are projected upward to heights to provide a good view and to give room for the explosion and some measure of safety. Projectile motion and rocket motion are some of the most important problems in classical physics because they offer a deceptively simple application of Newton's laws and understanding of acceleration, conservation of energy, conservation of momentum, and aerodynamic drag. There are many things that physicists do not understand. We could argue that most things physicists do not understand. But one thing physicists understand very well is projectile motion and rocket motion. And for me, it was the study of projectile motion as a college student, actually studying not a firework, but a cannonball, and the mathematical elegance of that problem that convinced me to become a physicist. And I have no doubt that this sculpture and the fireworks it evokes will continue to inspire students like myself and think about the physics of rockets and projectiles and fireworks. But of course, the thrill and drama of fireworks is in the light and sound emission. Understanding the nature of light and the ability of atoms to emit photons of light at different frequencies or colors as a consequence of electron transitions, which James will talk more about, that's at the heart of a whole revolution in physics that led to the theory of quantum mechanics. Early in my career here as a young professor, Dr. John Toll, who led the college some years after Dr. McLain, sat down across from me during lunchtime in the old dining hall, and I told him that I had just lectured in my modern physics course about emission of colors of light from atoms, the so-called Bohr theory of the atom. Hearing this, John said offhandedly and nonchalantly that he used to spend Christmases with the Bohrs when he worked in Copenhagen. As some of you may know, Niels Bohr, the patriarch of the Bohr family, won a Nobel Prize for his, and I'm quoting, services in the investigation of the structure of atoms and the radiation emanating from them, like the compounds that give fireworks their colors. If there was a game of 6 degrees of separation in science, where all scientists can be connected to one another through 6 or fewer social connections, we can now say that through Washington College, Dr. Conkling, Dr. McLain, whose pioneering work on pyrotechnic light emissions and fireworks is separated by less than 6 degrees from Niels Bohr, who pioneered an understanding of how atoms emit light. But thinking about light, the radiant echo sculpture as it appears in the McLain Atrium would have looked much different only a few years ago. My students may not remember a world in which white and blue light emitting LEDs were not common. The LEDs on radiant echo are lightweight and efficient, which makes radiant echo brilliant and bright and yet delicate and refined. White light LEDs of the kind used in radiant echo work when a blue light excites a phosphor coating that in turn radiates light with a spectrum that appears white. Researchers in Japan, Akasaki, Amano, and Nakamura were the first to discover the right combination of doping materials in certain semiconductors to generate photons of blue light. It turns out It's difficult to make a blue light LED, just like it's difficult to make a good blue firework. For this, they won the Nobel Prize in 2014. And if you're counting, that's 2 Nobel Prizes that are part of my story here in Radiant Echo. In several courses in the physics curriculum, we use spectrometers, both digital and handheld, to study light emission from different sources. My astronomy students have been known to roam the campus in search of unusual spectra, which they record with a diffraction grating and a cell phone. And then they compare that to reference spectra. LEDs, particularly the white light LEDs, have a unique spectra that I tell my students about. And this will help to make Radiant Echo a popular viewing target for my undergraduate astronomers for years to come. The LEDs aren't the LEDs aren't solely responsible for the light show in Radiant Echo. The reflecting spheres in the sculpture offer another teaching moment for our students. We in the physics department are building a new optics curriculum around the research interests of one of our new young professors. If you spend a moment on the bridge and the McLain Atrium and stare at the spheres in Glenn Schrumm's sculpture, you will see that the spheres create virtual images like you see in this Escher sketch. Similar to the mirror in your the mirror in your bathroom, but demagnified. Spherical surfaces compress the reflected image but create a gigantic field of view. If you look carefully, you'll see more than 180 degrees of reflection on the spheres. This shape therefore maximizes the amount of light exposed to reflection and enhances the ambient light effect from the sculpture. The spherical mirror is a standard subject in optics and a frequent topic for generating ray trace analyses, which our students love to do, which we make them do lots of. Our students will find immediate application of their analysis of spherical reflecting mirrors in Radiant Echo, which lies right outside the door of our optics lab, right up there, just adjacent to the McLain Atrium. And finally, as a faculty member who teaches astronomy at Washington College, I was thrilled to see that one of the display modes of Radiant Echo is something called Supernovae, which you just saw a minute ago, which is a title presumably meant to evoke an enormous explosive firework display as well as the astronomical phenomena. In astronomy, supernova typically refers to the cataclysmic demise of a star bigger than our sun that has exhausted its core nuclear fuel, leading to an inward collapse and outward explosion. And while I have not seen Radiant Echo Supernova, I'll be here tonight to see. I hope that one's going to be played tonight.
3 tickets.
All right, good. I'm excited about the opportunity to use the depiction of exploding fireworks as a model for explosions that occur in nature, including exploding stars and the explosion of matter in space itself in the Big Bang. Before the Big Bang was a television show, it was the name given to the currently accepted theory for the origin of the universe. And perhaps the most profound and important discovery in astronomy in the last century is the observation by American astronomer Edwin Hubble that the galaxies are moving away from one another at a rate proportional to their distance from us, a relationship known as Hubble's law. That galaxies further away from us should recede more quickly is difficult for students to visualize. What model, and I'm being honest here, what model have I used to teach this concept in the past? I've used fireworks. I tell the students to imagine themselves riding on a glowing ember, or what the fireworks experts call a star, a pyrotechnic star, as it bursts away from the core of a fireworks explosion. Around them are all the other stars, brightly lit and moving away. The stars also recede from one another, kind of like you see in this image here. The glowing stars close by may move more slowly away from you, while the further ones recede more quickly. Radiant Echo's depiction of fireworks will provide an immediate visual example of the firework model for the universal expansion. That's my firework model. I'm going to trademark that. Haven't seen it in a textbook yet. And I routinely evoke this in my class. And this is really one of the beautiful things about this sculpture, because through artwork, fireworks can be fireworks, but they can also be metaphor for supernova, for receding galaxies. And these and other ideas I look forward to exploring with my students in years to come. Thank you.
All right, well, first off, I just wanted to to begin my remarks just by echoing the thanks to not only the McLain family, but the many other friends of Washington College that are here today that helped make Radiant Echo a possibility, because in the chemistry department we're quite excited about this. And I have to say, I consider it a real honor to be part of this celebration of not only Dr. McLain, but also Dr. Conkling, not only because of their amazing contributions to the fields of chemistry and pyrotechnics, but also their amazing service to Washington College throughout their career. So as Dr. Cregan mentioned, my name is James Lipchuk. I'm an associate professor of chemistry here at Washington College. I serve as the co-chair of the chemistry department, along with Dr. Aaron Amick, but I also am the co-program director for our major in biochemistry and molecular biology. So today I wanted to talk, kind of shift gears from physics and talk kind of how I see this from the perspective of a chemist, a biophysical chemist, and some ideas that we have for how that Radiant Echo will be able to integrate into some of the courses we teach. And so for me, fireworks, right, if you want to make fireworks, you need to know a lot of chemistry. My area of specialization is in biophysics, but I wanted to at least have a slide that really acknowledged how important chemistry is in the creation of fireworks. There are components that help give us the colors that we really expect in a wonderful fireworks display, but we also need oxidizers, right? These are intense combustion reactions, and we need a source of oxygen for these reactions to happen efficiently, as well as other binders and other enhancers to kind of help keep those colors intense and control the visual optics of it. And what I want to focus on, I could certainly talk for quite extensively on many of these different aspects. I'll focus most on just the color production side because for me, this is a concept that I introduced in my most basic chemistry class. So the first class a student would take at Washington College in chemistry is one called Chemical Principles of Organic Molecules. And in that class, I mean, this is actually a slide that I utilize. I purposely wanted to kind of show those connections. We talk about spectroscopy, which is just the interaction between light, fancy word electromagnetic radiation, and matter. And so hopefully most of you know, but when it comes to atoms and molecules, the subatomic particles that are relevant are those protons within the nucleus, and then the electrons, which are in orbitals around those protons. And you may not know, but in chemistry, an important concept is the fact that these energy levels that I have shown here, they're quantized, which means that they can't just be any value they want. They're specific energy levels that depend on how many protons and how many electrons are present within that atom or molecule. And so this is relevant. So, I mean, normally molecules are in this ground state where the electron is in that lower energy state. In the case of fireworks, we detonate them, and so that gets them much more excited. And so what happens at a fundamental level is we're not really looking at electrons in those ground states. We are able to promote those to excited energy levels. And emission spectroscopy, which for me is, I mean, a fun way to think about that is looking at a fireworks display, is trying to understand how those electrons relax, and where they go. Because depending if they go to just a close energy level, you might get a longer wavelength of light. But as they start to go to energy levels that are further apart, this is how we get the unique range of different photons, the different colors that we see in a fireworks display. Okay. So in the context of chemistry, again, another slide that I utilize in CP is, maybe now looking at these various flame tests where there are different metal chlorides, you can see that again, based on how many protons and how many electrons are in those molecules, we start to get those different characteristic colors that we expect within a fireworks display. As I said, from a more chemical standpoint, we like to use fancy technology like spectrophotometers, where we would then take the light that's being emitted from that excited source and then put it through a diffraction grating or a prism, and then specifically analyze which wavelengths are present, the relative ratios. This is an incredibly powerful tool for being able to identify components in a mixture, identify the relative ratios. But in terms of fireworks, you don't need a fancy spectrophotometer to be able to analyze what's present. Your eye is actually a pretty amazing spectrophotometer. So I'll use that to kind of transition to my kind of other main passion, which is biochemical processes. And one important is, how we're able to see kind of what's happening in a fireworks display or in this Radiant Echo show. So I have a cartoon version of an eye, transitioning a little bit more to the molecular level. You can see this is a cartoon rendering of an important protein called an opsin. So we have these in our eyes. This is one that's specifically sensitive to green photons of light. I will say I feel really fortunate to live in a golden age of biochemistry where I don't have to be satisfied with these cartoon renderings of these important biological molecules. This is a crystal structure that was solved of one of these opsin proteins. And I will say, so I teach chemical principles of, CBC, so chemistry of biological compounds. It's a 300 level biochemistry class. And I have my students exploring these kinds of structures on a regular basis in class to be able to connect what they know about different functional groups, the molecular aspects, to then these important biological functions. And I'll say in the case of this opsin protein, what happens is there is an important molecule in the center of that protein. I've got it circled here, and it's something called retinal. So this is a prosthetic group that is bound in the center of that protein. This is a lysine amino acid. It covalently links to that retinal. And in the state where there isn't a green photon hitting your eye, it has the Sis conformation. So in organic, right, when the larger groups are on the same side of the double bond, Frank would be happy to know I'm teaching some organic chemistry. When those are on the same side, we call it the Sis conformation. And why this is relevant is when a photon of green light enters your eye and is absorbed by that cis double bond, it may seem minor, but it's actually quite significant. What happens is that 11 cis retinal becomes what we call all trans retinal, and it causes it to go from this bent conformation to this longer linear conformation. Maybe seems minor in the context of a protein that has hundreds of thousands of atoms, but that structural change in that center of the active site is enough to cause this helix to shift slightly, and then that structural change gets propagated to a G protein inside the cytosol, which then activates that protein, triggers a whole series of other biochemical pathways, and then eventually sends a signal to your visual cortex in your brain to say, I just saw a green photon of light. Which to me, I love living in this world of thinking about how really slight, seemingly insignificant changes to a structure can lead to, you know, something as amazing as being able to visualize a firework exploding or any kind of important light you might want to see. And what I'll add, so you might be saying, well, this is great, I understand how you can see a green photon, how do I see a rainbow of colors? It turns out we don't just have one opsin. We have a blue opsin, we have one that's sensitive to green, one that's sensitive to red, and just like in the LEDs, we're utilizing those three primary colors, mixing in different ways. It's pretty amazing to me, but our brain is able to synthesize input from all of those opsins simultaneously to then be able to observe all of these different types of light simultaneously. So if it's just red photons, you see red, but if you see a range, you might get yellow, and if you're seeing photons from all of them, then that's how we get to see white light. So, like I said, I wanted to give you just a little bit of an appreciation for some of the chemistry and some of the biochemistry of these processes. What I'd like to transition to next is, so I don't know if you're aware, but Dr. Heather Harvey in the Art and Art History Department had really wanted to be here today. Unfortunately, there was a death in her family, and so she couldn't be here. But she actually gave me some remarks. She asked if I would read, because she co-teaches a studio art class. It's called Art in the Anthropocene. And she co-teaches this with a chemist in my department, Dr. Ann Martiel Parrish. And they're both incredibly excited about radiant echo because they feel like it's a piece of artwork that really fits with the themes of their course. So I'm not sure if you're aware of what the term Anthropocene means. It just means our current time period that we live in. And it's referred to as the period in time where humans are the dominant influence on our climate and our environment. And so as a studio art class, what they have students do, so they have to make novel works of art themselves. But in doing so, they have to think about principles of green chemistry and environmentally friendly practices. And so Anne really wanted me to highlight that one of the 12 principles of green chemistry is this idea of energy efficiency. And through the use of the LED lighting, they're just very excited that radiant echo kind of embodies one of these key principles of green chemistry that they encourage their students to think about. In addition, I actually have some samples of student artwork from that class, and one of the things they're also excited about is the fact that they push their students to think beyond just traditional canvas and traditional types of artwork. and really get them to think about how they utilize space, how they fill space. You can see in this artwork here, they actually have things hanging from the ceiling. And so being able to have radiant echo as an example of some of these green chemistry principles, through the use of different types of media, the way it fills that space in the McLain Atrium, they're just very excited that this is now something that's a living exhibit that's going to be right outside of the classroom where they teach this course. So again, some additional examples. And so where I'll end my remarks, so I have something specifically that Heather asked that I would read, and so Anne and Heather wrote this together. They say, radiant echo, like our co-taught course and the liberal arts tradition in general, requires an interdisciplinary arsenal of skill sets working in tandem. The types of materials used in radiant echo, the visual display, its order, paired with extravagance, all mirror the conceptual, aesthetic, and ethical challenges our students work with in our art studio. Just a couple examples. A central principle of green chemistry conveyed in this light display is its energy-efficient design and recognition that environmental and economical impacts should be minimized whenever possible. From an artist's perspective, the lights demonstrate the variety of technical, material, and conceptual know-how artists must possess to bring their visions to fruition. Both disciplines rely on a sense of wonder, an appreciation for awe and mastery, a deep curiosity about our world, and a passion for pulling meaning and insight out of the seeming chaos of daily life. Radiant echo, like our disciplines, is a beautiful argument for both the poetry and science and for the arts as an important pathway to knowledge. So I'll end my comments there.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Jane. So the floor is now open to ask questions of our speakers. This is like class. James.
Yeah.
When I observe one of these spectacular fireworks displays, and I'm standing next to another individual, and I'm, shivering with excitement as to what I see, and the person next to me doesn't exhibit that same response, as it were, right? So if we were to attach electrodes to me and to the person next to me, is there a way to figure out
like what's happening at a more molecular level,
yeah,
or to that difference? So honestly, it'd be great to have more of a neuroscience-y kind of person. I'm more of a molecular person, but my guess is that ultimately there are pathways that involve adrenaline and that fight or flight response that sometimes those loud explosions can elicit. But then I would also think on the more positive side, these can maybe be familiar events that maybe release serotonin and have other more positive kind of associations. So I guess it's partly your previous life experiences which might color your response to it, and then what you associate those sounds with or those experiences with. And then I can't really expand much more beyond that, but maybe others in the audience might even know different things depending on their backgrounds with this.
Charlie.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. What is the time frame between when photon strikes that first protein and then your brain registers? That whole cascade.
Really fast? I couldn't tell you the exact. It's I'd say sub-10 a lot of it. One question that I wanted to talk about was, sorry, that's it. This kind of explains why you can be like red-blue colorblind or other things. If all you need to do is have a mutation in one of those genes, and then you can't see that photon, and so then you lose sensitivity to that. Anyone was interested in that, but kind of a way to explain why you might lose sensitivity to one color.
So in response to Charlie's question, when I started at Washington College a long time ago, and Joe McLain was chair and my boss, and we sat around tables with students, some of whom are here today. We talked about time and speed, and No, faster than that. It'll be anything faster than that. And Joe would say, that's as fast, at that time, fast was slow. Compared to what we now know about molecular operations, as it were, versus these other operations which are more external, that are easier to keep track of. It's hard to keep track of these biochemical time periods. Doctors know that. Other questions? All your questions have been answered. Or, as they say, the noise of your stomach's growling. Yes, a question, Susan.
I have a question, and maybe this is better answered by Lynn, actually.
Okay.
Something maybe she could tell us is about the derivation of purpose of fireworks. Why were they developed? What was the reason for it?
Oh. It was a long, cold, dark winter. And a guy living in a cave had some wood for his fireplace, had a little saltpeter or potassium nitrate for seasoning his yak, and he had a little bit of sulfur that he kept for various uses when starting fires. Mixed it all together, got a boom. And from that point on, all hell broke loose.
Thank you. One last question.
Didn't the military have a minor use for fireworks to, let's say, enlighten the battlefield?
Oh my goodness. I mean, the military uses lots of pyrotechnics. One of the ways they protect aircraft against incoming missiles, they shoot out flares that look like exhaust from a jet engine, and the missile gets directed towards it. They use, of course, basic handheld flares for signaling. Different colors mean charge or run as fast as you can, the other way. There are a variety of sorts with fuses. Years ago, all of them were little pyrotechnic tubes. There are more and more electronics and other more sophisticated methods coming in. But it's an ever-evolving science and technology. The military is one of the leaders in research. That research ultimately, in many cases, gets into civilian products and trickles down into the flare industry, and then from there into maybe even the fireworks industry.
Okay, so Glenn told you about this evening. You've read about this evening, 7:30. Bring your chair, bring your blanket, bring your overcoat. This evening for the full Monty, for the full display of radiant echo from A to Z, as it were. There'll be, as pointed out earlier, there'll be a demonstration of that at the dedicatory luncheon, which is being held out in the McLain Atrium. And I invite all of you who are here to take advantage of that wonderful buffet luncheon. There'll be, at that luncheon, there'll be, again, some salutes. That's a pyrotechnic term. Salutes to John and Joe and others. So thank you very much, and please join me in thanking our three presenters. Enjoy.
Many of you know that Washington College was once the very center of the pyrotechnics. two of our chemistry professors, both alumni, who are considered the best in the industry. The late Joe McLain, a 1937 graduate who would later become college president, and his protege, Dr. John Conkling, a 1965 graduate who retired in 2012 after more than 40 years of teaching and experimenting. Both were enormously influential in technological development, teaching, testing, and industry standards in the field of fireworks for some 70 years after World War II. Dr. McLain held more than 30 patents for inventions such as smoke grenades to camouflage troops, underwater torches used by the Navy, and warning flares used by police and motorists on highways throughout the nation. Dr. Conkling, too, holds several patents for propellant compositions, detonators, and the process of energetic combustion. I just think that I'm probably going to be real careful around. Don't tell anybody here at the college about those patents. Dr. McLain wrote 3 books on pyrotechnics, and Dr. Conkling is the author of Chemistry of Pyrotechnics, now in its 3rd edition. I've been remiss not to acknowledge that another Washington College alumnus is continuing a long-standing tradition of pyrotechnics. Chris Masella, class of 01, a government science officer, is now co-author with Dr. Conkling on the indispensable reference for professionals in the industry. Folks must also not know that Dr. Conkling continues to provide the campus with fireworks that mark the opening and closing of the academic year. I especially like the ones at the closing of the academic year. Clearly, pyrotechnics is something of a family affair on this campus, and we have one of our most devoted Washington College daughters, Mrs. McLain, to thank for bringing us to this moment. She was the spark, as I mentioned, she was the spark, which is the massive understatement of the day behind this project that showcases an important part of our history and that inspires this and future generations of students to discover, and I do hope you heard that this thing is built so if students decide to hang on it, nobody can get hurt. That's a great move. So really, again, truly, Lynn, thank you so much for everything you've done and your perseverance in bringing us this moment. So it's now my pleasure to invite Lynn McLain up to make some comments.
Thank you, President Landgraf. It is so exciting to have reached this day. We couldn't have made it without your support and everyone here's support. I thank you all for your generosity. Generous gifts of many kinds, financial, time, many hours, creativity, and just caring for John and Sandy, caring for my parents and for Washington College. And after the program, please be sure to look at the plaques of dedication and donor recognition, one over there with the donors listed. And there's one up there on the 2nd story at that end of the bridge, the dedication plaque. My parents met at Washington College in the 1930s, just as John and Sandy did in the 1960s. All 4 fell in love with Washington College, the close community, and the special relationship the faculty and administration have with the students. And I think we saw some more of the reasons for that, how that continues today with James's and Charlie's presentations. My dad loved spending time with students in the classroom, the lab, his office, but also playing bridge at Miss D's. Where's Al? Al's here. Going to sports practices and games, and just ambling around campus. As John once said, he wondered how my dad ever got any work done. My dad died too early at age just having turned 65. But under the first law of thermodynamics, Energy doesn't disappear, it just lives on in another form or place. And Joe McLain's energy remains here at Washington College, and with all of his students, his family, his friends, and his colleagues. My mom's spirit joined his when she passed in 2014, and today I'm sure Dale Patterson Adams, 65, and Karen Johnson, 68, among others, are also here with us in spirit. My father's pyrotechnics work began in the Army when he was in the Chemical Corps in World War II. When he came to Tony Fabrizi's plant to solve problems with erratic grenade fuses. He and Tony became fast friends. Tony's daughter Kathy was here earlier, but she had to go. And they continued working together in peacetime. My dad asked John to work with him on fireworks safety standards in the early 70s. And John, too, fell in love with the industry and the wonderful people in it, including Tony. After my father's death in 1981, John brought my dad's Franklin Institute series on pyrotechnics here at Washington College for about 20 years, I believe. And John became executive director of the American Pyrotechnics Association and the world expert on the science of fireworks. Because of their mutual dedication to Washington College and to the APA, fireworks-inspired art seemed the ideal way to honor John and Sandy and my parents. Flux Studio has done an incredible job to master this challenge, which I think was an unprecedented challenge that we posed to them. And Glenn and all of you have just done a fantastic job, and I thank you. So please now welcome Julie Heckman, John's successor as and the current executive director of the American Pyrotechnics Association.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Julie Heckman, the Executive Director of the American Pyrotechnics Association, and it is an honor to be at Washington College today to celebrate two great pyrotechnic chemists who have left an indelible mark, not just on this wonderful institution, but on the U.S. firework industry as well. Dr. Joseph McLain, who served as chairman of the Washington College Chemistry Department, and was also a former co-owner of a pyrotechnic manufacturing plant in Chestertown, and Dr. John Conkling, a chemistry professor at Washington College who worked alongside Dr. McLain, and together they developed a set of product safety standards for consumer use fireworks. These standards became the primary foundation for the first regulations promulgated by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission in 1976. During that same time period, the principal firework industry trade association, the American Pyrotechnics Association, which was actually founded in 1948, was managed by an 81-year-old gentleman named Mr. Robert Moon, who was very interested in retirement. The APA Board of Directors approached Dr. Conkling about joining the staff of the APA, given the increased regulatory activity and technical issues facing the firework industry. Little did Dr. Conkling know at that time that this part-time position of the APA, which he accepted in 1972, which allowed him to work at home during the summer break at Washington College and also on the weekends, would blossom into a full-time position, engaging him more and more in the firework industry. In 1984, Dr. Conkling resigned as a tenured full professor of chemistry at Washington College and became the full-time executive director of the APA. Dr. Conkling was fortunate to work alongside his wife, Sandy, who became the APA office manager and also an integral part of the APA organization. Chestertown was the first home and official office of the APA, in shared space in the fan building. not too far from the college campus. However, everything seems to be in close proximity to the college campus in Chesterfield. Dr. Conkling steered the ship of the APA for 26 years, serving as Secretary-Treasurer and as the Executive Director for 14 years. John and Sandy's children, Melinda and John Jr., were permanent fixtures at APA events throughout Dr. Conkling's career, as the firework industry is family-friendly. John tried to retire from the APA multiple times, relinquishing the Executive Director position in 1998, when I was afforded the opportunity to take the reins. But he agreed to stay on as Technical Director for a number of years, and he still today serves as a technical consultant to the APA, to the American Fireworks Standards Laboratory, which he helped establish 30 years ago, and to APA's Safety and Education Foundation. With regard to APA's Safety and Education Foundation, whose mission is to educate youth to celebrate safely, Dr. Conkling was a significant contributor to the development of the educational curriculum for grades 4 through 8 and 9 through 12. The curriculum includes modules on the history of fireworks, safe use, how to avoid illegal and homemade fireworks, the science behind fireworks, and engineering. Each module is accompanied by a brief 60-second animated video featuring Professor Sparks, which was finally designed to represent an animated Dr. Conkling. If you haven't seen the curriculum or the videos yet, I invite you to check out www.celebratesafely.org. And I think you'll be incredibly impressed, as we are very proud of this curriculum and Dr. Conkling's contributions to it. I've had the privilege of working with Dr. Conkling for over 30 years. I remember my first visit to Washington College in 1990. I attended one of the summer pyrotechnic chemistry seminars instructed by Dr. John. I even stayed at the college campus dormitories and enjoyed meals in the dining hall. I learned immediately that Dr. Conkling was the leading expert on pyrotechnic chemistry, and regulators across the country flocked to participate in his special summer chemistry seminars to understand the science behind fireworks and explosives. My laboratory partners in that week-long seminar were representatives from the Aberdeen Proving Ground, which is a division of the U.S. Army, the leading agencies that regulate the firework industry, including the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Attending that program gave me a much better understanding of the science and technical issues that would be at the forefront of every new proposed rulemaking impacting the firework industry for decades to come. And I immediately understood why Dr. Conkling was the subject matter expert when it came to all things fireworks related. Dr. Conkling has been a mentor to me throughout my 30-year career and with the firework industry. I also consider him to be a genuine, lifelong friend. He championed the development of the industry's first public safety campaign, the National Council on Fireworks Safety, and conducted an exhausting public relations campaign each 4th of July to promote safety to the general public. Today, Dr. Conkling will still help out with annual APA safety campaign interviews, and he is our go-to spokesman for any interviews regarding chemistry of fireworks and technological advances in the industry. Dr. Conkling is responsible for the foundation of numerous codes and standards that have improved safety in the manufacture, transportation, handling, and use of fireworks, and in the formation of an independent voluntary testing program to ensure that consumer fireworks imported from China not only meet but exceed the regulations of the Consumer Product Safety Commission. That organization is the American Fireworks Standards Laboratory, which can be credited for improving the overall quality and safety of consumer fireworks on the market today for millions of Americans to purchase and use in their backyard fireworks celebrations each Independence Day. And I am delighted to note that the Executive Director of the AFSL Mr. John Rogers is present today at this special dedication. Dr. Conkling is an incredibly humble man. I don't think he truly understands or appreciates just how much of a positive influence and impact that he has had on the American fireworks industry. Although those of us in the industry know that with certainty, how impactful his life work in the field of pyrotechnic chemistry and his service to the APA have contributed not only to the survival of the industry, which at times was quite uncertain, but to an industry that now thrives. For a tiny town like Chestertown on the eastern shore of Maryland, and this incredible institution, Washington College, the contributions of both Dr. Joseph McLain and Dr. John Conkling, their passion for pyrotechnics influenced an evolution in the firework industry. Their work is responsible for the success of the APA and the firework industry as a whole. On behalf of the APA Board of Directors and APA's 250 member companies, we are grateful to Washington College in dedicating the Radiant Echo lighting sculpture in honor of Dr. McLain and Dr. Conkling, two legendary and remarkable individuals to our industry. Washington College and its pyrotechnic chemistry program has much to be proud of, including its deep roots in the American firework industry, and now the students, faculty, and community can be reminded of this daily with the prominence and brilliance of the radio echo lighting display illuminating the atrium. It's my pleasure to introduce Jeff Johnson.
Thank you, Julie. I'm honored today to be able to speak about an institution, a field of study, and two individuals that have meant so very much to me and have had such a profound impact on both my personal and professional life. This new addition in the atrium is certainly a unique recognition of the college's long history in the field of fireworks and pyrotechnics, and in particular, to honor two great forces in all things pyrotechnic. Dr. Joseph McLain, class of 37, and my mentor, Dr. John Conkling, class of 65. I was fortunate to briefly meet Dr. McLain on a pre-admission visit. I remember his smile and his chuckle. Though I never attended classes with Joe at the helm, he existed for us as a legend around campus. And I did get to study under his protege, Dr. Conkling. As a junior, I became interested in the work that Dr. Conkling was doing in fireworks. I've continued my career in pyrotechnics, and I've been fortunate and honored to be able to work with John for these past 35 years. It all started with me helping in the lab for the summer pyrotechnics seminars, which you've heard so much about, and meeting the interesting people connected to the industry. Hashtag crazy pyros. Some of those stories I'm going to take to my grave with me. Little did I realize at the time that accepting a student job as researcher with John would lead me to find a career in a field of study that's held my passion, challenged me, and it's been a lot of fun. Joe, John, and I have surprisingly similar and remarkable college experience. Not only did we each receive a wonderful education at Washington College, the guidance of a true mentor, and discover our life's work, we each met and married the love of our life. I can only hope that they had as much fun here during their 4 years as I did during mine. Somehow, I suspect they did. John, in my opinion, you have educated an industry in the safe manufacture and transportation of pyrotechnics immeasurably. It's truly been a privilege to learn from the Jedi Master. Thanks for all your support, encouragement, and advice over the years, and for being a true friend and mentor. And now I'd like to introduce another WC Chemistry alumni, but I'm going to try to do her name justice. Terumi Koi Shigematsu, class of 71.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terumi Koi Shigematsu. I'm a class of 71, major in chemistry. And I'm a professor at the University of California in San Francisco. And my laboratory studies mechanisms of gene regulation in cancer and stem cells. And our lab has been funded by NIH for more than 35 years. And I really wish to congratulate the successful installations of this beautiful radiant echo in memory of Dr. Joe McLain and his wife Anne, and in honor of John Conkling and his wife Sandy. And I particularly wish to thank Lynn McLain for her inspirations of having something to do with firework in this atrium. And it's really important to have the innovative thinking first, the vision. And that's actually attracted many people's support, and that's what you have achieved. And then now it's a beautiful thing since installed. Her dream came true. And here, in a very short time that I'm allowed, I wish to share 2 episodes from my memory of my college life. Back in 50 years ago. I sound like a fossil. But in 1967, I entered Washington College, determined to be a bio major. But instead of taking biology course during my freshman year, I chose to take Introduction to Chemistry taught by Dr. McLain. And one day, I was talking to Dr. McLain in his office at the basement of the dining hall, which is a tiny office. I thought that Dr. McLain barely fit. but he said, Terumi, you've got to think. If you want to become a biology major in the future, you've got to understand that all the biological materials are made of chemicals. You've got to understand how the chemicals react to make bond and dissociate. And that is an important piece of information you need to know before you understand biology. And I immediately thought that was a really good idea, and I accepted it. Actually, as of today, I consider myself as a chemist studying biology. And that is a big difference in the concept. And so that's one episode. Another episode also happened in Dr. McLain's office. One day, I was called in to his office, and he handed me a small book, and he asked me to translate it into English. And the cover of the book says Hanabi in Japanese. Hanabi is written as flower, fire, and it's firework. And so I opened the pages, and every single page is written in Japanese thoroughly, without any use of internationally recognized chemical symbols. It was really difficult, but I knew all that, so it was no problem for me. Actually, and it took a whole week, and as I spoke in English, because as I saw in the book, he would just make a very quick note. And then as I spoke faster, he would much faster. And we were busy doing that. It was a really fun time. And I learned a lot also. And during the break, he said, Terumi, the firework technology in Japan is quite advanced. And they can make firework with the rabbit ear weapon. He said, oh my God, and I really didn't believe it right at that time. All these years I thought he was just kidding. But this past summer, in 2019, I was in Japan. And I just happened to see the annual competition of the firework in Japan was displayed on a big TV screen. And sure enough, I saw one entry to the competition had this firework that turned out to be like a control, like a ring. The ring turned out to be like an animal face. And then finally it became a Mickey Mouse with a big ear, something like that. So I had a really fun time, and I was one of the first students taught by Dr. Frank Cregan and Dr. Don Conkling. And so I have so many memories I can share with you, and I cannot thank enough for all the support you have given me. So with this, I would like to invite the next speaker, Brian Matthews. Really?
Good afternoon. For me and for many of us that went to school here in the 70s, it was Dr. Conkling and Dr. McLain. That's how we knew them both. Dr. Conkling is actually the first professor here that I got to know outside the classroom. So it was the first person that became a real person to me as an 18-year-old freshman. Back in those days, the fraternities were in West Hall, Middle Hall, and East Hall. And Dr. Conkling was our faculty rep, sort of for lack of a better name. Back in those days, you had faculty that would actually work with fraternities, try to keep us out of trouble, keep us in the straight and narrow, and figure out how to do things. So Dr. Conkling would occasionally come to our parties in the basement of West Hall. Now, the good news is, before you get worried about the rest of the story, you always left early. Sorry about that. But what it did is it gave us a chance to get to know him as a person, and as an alum, and as somebody who was successful in his career, as well as working with us in the classroom. Dr. Conkling always tried to get me to take chemistry. He kept telling me how easy chemistry was. The closest I got to chemistry was I was a political science major. That's how far he got that. But he was always a straight shooter with us. He was a mentor. He was a guide. He was just a great guy for us. And what I found was interesting is even on campus in those days, and then for the last 40 years, every time you ever run into Dr. Conkling, he always genuinely cares about what's going on in your life, and what you're doing, and how you're doing. And that made a huge difference. Now, Dr. McLain, I've got 4 memories I'd like to share with you about Dr. McLain. These are the 4 that are cleaned up and that I can tell. And to me, they tell the story of what Dr. McLain meant. The first was Dr. McLain launched my career and forever changed the path for suing. In 1977, I was an assistant lacrosse coach here, making $400 a year. And had a great time. I loved it. It made my blood flow, and I was pretty sure that was what I wanted to do. But in June of 1977, Sue and I were about to get married, and couldn't quite figure out, and her dad went too crazy about $400 a year. I don't understand what the problem was with that, but needed to figure something else out. We were 2 months away from moving to New Hampshire to help a couple run a bed and breakfast resort up there, and that we were packing and we were ready to go. And in May of 1977, about a month or 2 before we were going to go, we were getting married in June, Dr. McLain offered a 25-year-old kid who didn't know what he didn't know the job, my dream job, being a head lacrosse coach in Washington College. He trusted me. He had confidence in me, and he gave me a shot. Now, it was the shortest interview I ever had in my life. Walked into his office. He said, "Do you want the job?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Cut your hair, clean up that beard, and get to work." So, that was it. And the first couple of years, and we knew we had inherited a team that was in transition. We had a couple of pretty good teams before then, and everybody graduated. Things were not good at all. And Dr. McLain never questioned, trusted. Isn't it funny, it made me think back, isn't it funny how we think back on the people who gave you the break in your life early on, and how it changed your whole life? Second one, Doc was always on the sidelines for our games. And I mean, right on the sidelines. And to say that he was actively engaged with the officials during the game was putting it very nice. He just loved the whole chaotic scene. He loved the craziness. He liked to be right by the bench, right on the sidelines. He liked to express his thoughts during the game quite a bit. Not with us, but with the officials on the field. But what was really neat about it is, as a freshman, right off the bat, got a chance to get to know the president of the college in a human way and in a really unique and different way. And it was really a neat experience, and it was an eye-opener. Third one, sophomore year. We go to Portland to play for the national championship up there. And we had a pretty good team. We had a good season to get there, but they were better than we were. And it was a long day. They beat the crap out of us. I was in the goal, so I know what it felt like down there at that end. And it was a rough way to end the season, and we were licking our wounds. We were in the locker room afterwards. We were feeling pretty sorry for ourselves. Pretty down. What happens? The door busts open. Doc McLain walks in carrying a case of champagne. And he starts opening them up and handing them out and celebrating as if we had won the national championship. And what it did, it showed us his unconditional love and how much he cared about us. It was a major lesson in my life. The last one, and this is the most surprising for me, because I'm thinking about my memories of Dr. McLain. This one has stuck with me for 45 years. Lynn mentioned Miss Dees. Well, Miss Dees was the center of the universe. It was the coffee shop downstairs in the old snack bar, and the world here at Washington College revolved around Miss D and Miss Dees. For one, she floated us all credit. We had no money. That was fascinating the world. You're going there hungry and you never leave. So my senior year, I go in there to get lunch, and there's Dr. McLain sitting at a table by himself. And I get something, I'm walking by, hi Doc, how you doing? I said, sit down. So I sat down. I said, Doc, what are you doing? He was translating a research book in German into English, and he was working on it. I'm just trying to get ready for the next crossing. Here's the president translating a book in German. And this led to, I don't remember all that many little details about my college time in the early 70s. What I do remember is that we proceeded to have a conversation about nuclear energy. Now, this was in 1974. And I don't remember how or why it came up. Maybe it was the book he was reading. But we had a really fascinating, for me it was fascinating, conversation about nuclear energy and why Dr. McLain believed that it was really important at that time and for the future of the energy needs of this country. That regardless of petroleum and other energies, that it would be very hard to replace. It was cleaner than some of the alternatives, and that he felt it was very, very important. And obviously, it was a one-way conversation. I was listening, and trying to understand and learn, but it was such an enlightening experience for me as a 22-year-old kid to sit with the president of the college and have him share that kind of a conversation. It was empowering for me. And I've never forgotten just those moments there, what that was like. Little did I know that 2 years later, he would offer me the opportunity of a lifetime.
these talks that people have presented. Thank you all very, very much for that. I have been at this school a long time. Came here in 1961, I guess. Graduated in 65. Went to Johns Hopkins for 4 years. In the middle of my 4th year, Dr. McLain came over to Hopkins and said, John, let's have a lunch, snack party. So snack party, he said, need a chemistry teacher for next year. Can you teach one? And I was finishing my degree. My wife was 7 months pregnant. We were trying to figure out what we were doing. I said, yeah, I'll come over and teach. And now what am I going to do? But we were able to find a house. We were able to have our daughter Melinda, who is right over here. She's with us today. My son John is also here somewhere. He's a wrestler, let me tell you that. I stopped messing with him when he was in probably his sophomore year in high school or something. But I'm just delighted to have him here today. And it's 54 years ago, I guess, I started to get involved with Washington College. There were 100 students in my graduating class here at Washington College. You got to know just about everyone in your class. We're fortunate to have 2 excellent professors in the chemistry department. I mean, major colleges and universities have dozens of chemistry professors in some cases, but for 2 people and 3 people to be teaching a whole chemistry program was a challenge, but we handled it. The one thing I did find I was well prepared for graduate school and was able to finish there in a respectable time. And the personal attention I received from the professors here was, I think, one of the big reasons why I was able to succeed in graduate school, and I was committed to trying to provide students I had here when I was teaching full-time and then later part-time that type of personal contact. I'm delighted to have one of my students here today, Jeff. 2 students. Any others? I forgot. Oh my God! They snuck in. And someone don't quite the same. I'm glad we have these little white badges. But I'm just pleased that so many of you showed up here. But I found I was well prepared for graduate school. And I think that all of us are a reflection of having Joe McLain as one of our professors here. Some of you, I guess, by that time you had moved into the presidency. I have a few stories about Joe and the presidency, and I keep a lot of them to myself. He sort of used me as a sounding board for his ideas, because he knew when he told me we'd stay there, and unlike a college campus, which I'm sure you tell one person something on a college campus, and by 4 o'clock, everybody on campus knows you're starting to get emails and everything else. And it's, I feel for you. I'm just delighted to have you here as president. He's a chemist, which is certainly a positive for the chemistry department. But the big thing I found is that I was so well prepared for graduate school by coming to a small college. It took me about a year to get people in my class to know where Washington College was. Someone came over to see the school. The legacy of the professors, just helping students, is one thing I've tried to continue during my time here. I just want to thank the college for all the knowledge, all the experiences Washington College provided me. I just wish this wonderful school decades and decades and decades of successful education of additional students. It's a delight, it's a pleasure to be here today to see everybody, and thank you all for coming.
Okay, so I'm going off script, and you're saw how this all screwed everything up. Okay? So we're not turning this on without these two people standing here. Okay, we're not doing that. Okay, there's not much you can do as a college president, but I can make this decision. And incidentally, if you tell it 9 o'clock, it's not 4 o'clock that everybody on campus knows, it's 9:30. So I know this is a moment we've all been waiting for, to have a demonstration of reading echo. And I'm going to ask Lynn Trump to come up and make a few comments, and then we'll turn it on. And then I would like to just say to you, to all of those folks who worked with Lynn in the college to contribute to this phenomenal event, and gave you your hard-earned money to support this college and honor these two wonderful people, from the bottom of my heart and for everyone at the college, we are extraordinarily grateful for your support. So with that, if Glenn could come up and make a few comments, and then we'll move forward.
Thank you. And I wanted to just say, we know that Washington College is a special place. The talks that preceded this announcement, turning the artwork on, it made it even more clear to us. And it was such a great privilege to create a piece in honor of Dr. Conkling and Dr. McLain. Without further ado, we're going to turn on the resting state. We invite you to come back in the evening to see the active state. But I think we're ready.
So again, thank all of you for being here. Conkling, thank you. So tonight is 7:30, and we're not going to have a more beautiful night. Although I think Dr. Krieger pointed out, bring a coat, because this fall is finally here. Tonight at 7:30, you can come back, bring a chair, bring a blanket, bring your living room couch, I don't care what you do. Come out here and you'll be able to see this beautiful sculpture be lit up in the night sky. I think I've seen this is extraordinarily impressive. Thank you very much, it was very impressive. And again, thank you. So let's give every one of them a nice round.